Power of being. Being is not a destination. It's a season that we go through. Last week, if you listened to the episode, you heard all about how life was happening for me. I lost my uncle. I got sick. I was recovering. Time was passing by. I was just drowning in what was happening around me. Before I knew it, life had been on pause. And there were several things in my life that were being put at the bottom of the task list, and this podcast being one of them. So last week, I shared with you all how that happened and what am I doing to overcome it. And when I thought about that time, I wasn't doing anything. I was barely surviving. I got so behind on so many things. I wasn't building anything. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't executing anything. There was nothing for me to push towards because I found myself in the state of being. Welcome back to the Act2vate Effect podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Pastrano. And today we're talking about what it means to be in a state of being. Being in a state of existence is allowing yourself to be present with where you are, spiritually, mentally, physically. It's allowing yourself to just be and feel those things. It's being in a moment where you're not forcing yourself to decide on what comes next. It's allowing yourself to feel and go through all the emotions that you are feeling in that moment or lack thereof. But something inside of you is clearly not the same as you have been previously. Most of us are conditioned that we're constantly looking for what's next, the next promotion, the next project, the next relationship, the next milestone. We are constantly moving towards something that most of us ignore this opportunity to be in the state of being because it's uncomfortable. We're so focused on moving on to what's next versus listening to ourselves and processing what's happening right now and what is this moment that I'm in right now asking of me. The state of being can feel uncomfortable. It is something we're not used to because we're so used to moving, to doing, to achieving, to promoting, to going forward. The wheels are constantly going round and round, moving us to the next thing because that is how we've been programmed. Especially if you are in a high visible role, you have a lot of responsibilities. It's always about more, more, more. You never get an opportunity to pause. No one's allowing you to pause. No one's forcing you to pause. This is actually something, the state of being that you have to take control over for your own personal wellness, to recognize it and to stop. And this is so important for you to do because when we slow down, we create space. And in that space, we can actually feel what we're feeling. Emotions are coming up. Am I fatigued? Am I tired? Do I have insomnia? All those questions that come up when you're listening to yourself allows you to process the state of being that you're in. And it's important for you to connect with what you're feeling, what you're thinking, because then you're allowed to walk through it and get better. In the state of being, it's for you to recognize so you can get better and move past it and come on the other side even healthier and in a better place for yourself. Because sometimes we're so busy doing that we're distracting ourselves from the process that we actually need to go through. When my uncle died and I was focused on just the next thing, I'm not able to sit with the grief that I'm going through, the exhaustion, the disappointment, the fear, the anger. There's so many things that happen when someone close to you dies. You may be feeling uncertainty, anger, loneliness, and you might be identifying that what was working before is no longer working now. It may bring up certain things to your awareness that you weren't aware of before. And being in the state of being will help you realize what needs to change. What about myself was I doing that I no longer should be doing? It's so important to feel and process what's happening inside of you. Because if you don't take the time to process it, it doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It just slowly starts to build up more and more inside of you. And if it's a negative emotion, like anger, disappointment, fear, and you let it just continue to build inside of you, it's only going to get worse before you just explode, before you just take it out on the next person. So that's why it's so important when you recognize that you need to be in that state of being, that you allow yourself to do so. When you take time to work through what's happening, you're able to make decisions based on clarity instead of just reacting to something. You recognize patterns that you don't want to repeat. You start to process what you actually need, or what do you want. Knowing what you want is not a bad thing, because, for example, if you jump into the next relationship and you know what you want and they don't have it, you're able to easily identify that they don't have it and move on without pain, without wasting time, and just separate as friends or acquaintances. You're able to identify what you've outgrown. You know, when people tell you that you've changed, you should be changing. You should be outgrowing the person that you were last year. You should be evolving. That's why we're here as human beings, to continue to learn from our mistakes. We should be building our next steps from alignment rather than avoidance. When we're aligned, we know who we are. We know what we like, what we don't like. We understand what our thoughts are telling us, what our gut is telling us. How should we move forward? We've been in this situation before. This is what I did last time and it worked. Or this is what I did last time and it didn't work. So being in a state of being allows you to process where you are so you can get to the end goal quicker. All the work that you do in the season of being prepares you for the decisions you make when it's time to move forward. It's that strategic value that you are given from being. So you're not wasting your time when you move forward, because you've taken the opportunity to process everything that you are in that state of being, that when you're ready to move forward, you know how to do it aligned and strategically. In a state of being, you're gathering information, you're learning from yourself, you're getting clear on what you're feeling, what you like, what you don't like. How can you get better? What just happened? And all of that clarity becomes a foundation for your next move. But you could only gain that clarity if you allow yourself to be still in the being and listen to what your body is telling you. If you are quiet, you will listen to what your mind, your body, and your soul is telling you that you need to process and you need to do. As a coach, I constantly remind my clients, you have everything you need inside of you to take the next step. You know what you need to do. But working with the coach, we help bring it out of you quicker. Sometimes we don't want to feel. Sometimes we don't want to be in the state of being, not only because it's uncomfortable, but because it forces ourselves to face straight on of what we're feeling, and we don't want to. We don't want to feel what we're feeling. We may not want to feel those emotions because that's actually a way of ourselves protecting ourselves. So we distract ourselves, we get busy, we scroll, we overwork, we overplan, we start something new, we tell ourselves we're fine, we make everything seem on the outside that everything's happy-go-lucky, but we are not actually addressing what's underneath. And all this is doing is just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. And that's not really solving anything. So instead of feeling and processing and understanding and working through what we're going through, you're choosing to avoid, to distract yourself, to suppress your feelings and move on. But if you don't address what's happening at the root cause, then eventually it shows up again. In a new job, in a new relationship, a new business, a new chapter, a new environment, a new relationship doesn't automatically create a new version of you. It doesn't make things better. It doesn't get rid of the problem that you had. Sometimes you have to do the internal work first. So I encourage you that when life gets quiet, ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I noticing? What keeps coming up for me? So when you are in a season of transition, whether a relationship or a death in the family or in between jobs, and you are feeling that a lot is happening, and you can feel it in your stomach, you can feel it in your head, maybe you're losing sleep. I want you to ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I noticing? What keeps coming up for me? What have I been too busy to acknowledge? What might this season be trying to show me right now? And you don't need to have the immediate answers to these questions. You just have to be able to listen to yourself, to hear yourself, what your being is actually asking you to process. I want you to give yourself permission of where you are. Not every season needs to be optimized. Sometimes you're on a vacation, you're recovering, you're resting, you're recharging, you're enjoying life, and you're not ready to figure out what's next. And you don't have to feel guilty about that. But I want you to ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped judging yourself for where you are right now? I want you to get curious about what's happening within you. Being isn't just ignoring what's happening. It's paying attention to how you're thinking and how you're feeling. The state of being doesn't require you to stay forever. There's a difference between being still and being stuck. Stillness can be intentional. Ask yourself, am I resting or am I avoiding? Am I listening or am I hiding? Am I taking a pause or have I stopped completely? Don't just feel it, learn from it. Once you've embraced your season and allowed yourself to feel it, ask yourself, what is this experience telling me? What do I want to carry forward? What do I want to leave behind? What has changed about me? What do I need now that I didn't need before? What is no longer aligned to who I am? What matters more to me now? When I lost my uncle, I had to ask myself all these same questions, and I identified gaps in my business that needed to be strengthened. I identified the relationships that I wanted to come back to because I didn't want to not have a goodbye like I didn't have with my uncle. I was asking myself and figuring out, what person did I no longer want to be? What did I learn about this about myself? And how did I want to show up for myself? How did I want to show up for my family? Was there any wrongs that I needed to make right? And this is where being becomes strategic. You're not just sitting still, you're gathering information about yourself. And that information helps you make a better decision for what's next. You don't need to know the entire path. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need every question answered. You just need to identify what's the next right step. Should I just be here with what I'm feeling and process that? Ask myself these questions, allow myself to just grieve, allow myself to be a couch potato because I just don't feel like doing anything right now. Should I have more quality time with my friends and family, those people that bring me joy, because that's what I need to feel right now? Allowing yourself to feel that state of being allows you to figure out what's the right next step for you and when. Being gives you space to hear yourself. It gives you the clarity to decide what's next, what, how, and when. And it gives you the opportunity to move when you're ready without feeling guilty about it. My uncle died in April, and it was June when I was starting to come back to things. Sometimes you don't need to restart right away, and give yourself that grace. I could have easily said I was off track, but that's not true. I recognize now that I was in a state of being. I needed to feel that pain. I needed to process what I was going through. I needed to process, why was I angry? What did I feel guilty about when he died? How can I make that better for other people? So if something like this happens again, I have closure. How do I need to be present? How do I need to slow down? These are all things that I needed to process. I needed to experience life as it was happening instead of constantly thinking about what was next. And that's why my business was on hold for months. This podcast wasn't happening, but that's what I needed to process that state of being. Because if I would have kept going and moving forward and just doing everything on autopilot, I wouldn't have processed all that. I wouldn't have been able to work through any of that pain, any of that guilt, any of that anger. And working through that first helps me build from a stronger foundation when I'm ready to move forward. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Sometimes we think we're supposed to constantly move forward, but what happens if moving forward is for you to stand still long enough to hear yourself? Maybe your next chapter isn't about doing more. Maybe it's about becoming more aligned with who you are now and embracing this moment so you can proactively and strategically move on to what's next. Being is not a destination, it is a season, and every season has something to teach you. Maybe this season is teaching you to have fun, to be present, to slow down, to listen to yourself, to let go, to heal from the inside out and to reimagine what's next. Whatever the season is teaching you, don't rush through it. Be there for it. And when you're ready to move, you will know. Trust yourself that you will. But here's the question. How do you know when you're simply in a season of being versus when you are actually stuck? Because being still and being stuck are two different things. And next week, we will talk about how to become unstuck, if that's truly what you are. Until next time, accept where you are, align with where you're going, and activate what's next.